This week in CSGO, minor pistol changes, new map rotations, and a slight increase to the economy. But who cares? The SG553 is 2,750, baby! Finally, the SG553 has come back to the competitive meta. If there's one thing you do know about me in CSGO, it's that I have an almost unhealthy obsession with using the scoped assault rifles in competitive play. In fact, I've been advocating for more SG553 usage since 2015. And now that it's finally here, well, most people have moved on and are probably now playing Fortnite. But for those of you who are still playing CSGO and are interested in trying out the SG or AUG, here are my top 3 tips that every rifle convert should know. Number 1. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that. Number 1. You paid extra for that 2x scope, so you might as well use it. Sounds obvious, I know. But the biggest mistake I've seen people make when using the AUG or SG is the utter lack of scoped usage. While you certainly can get away with using the SG or AUG in the traditional assault rifle sense, they both contain recoils and spray patterns that are different from the standards that most players are used to, especially the SG553, which has an almost complete opposite spray pattern of the AK-47. So instead of using the scoped rifles like a gimped AR, I highly suggest scoping in on all targets almost everywhere outside of CQC. Not only does scoping in on a target increase the weapon's overall accuracy to some of the best in CSGO, but it also obviously magnifies the targets in question, making them easier to see and thus easier to hit. Now, while scoping in does somewhat obscure your peripheral vision, I actually find it more helpful than harmful, as it does help me focus more on the targets at hand, sort of like how squinting works in real life. Besides that, the only other drawback to constantly scoping while shooting is the minuscule delay it takes to actually scope in. While of course every millisecond counts in CSGO, the trade-off between half a millisecond and some of the best weapon inaccuracies in the game is well worth the risk. Number 2. Tap, tap, and tap some more. The second most egregious mistake I see players make when using the AUG or SG is that they always try to spray with the weapon, even when scoped. Now, besides CQC, I am of the opinion that you should always try to tap fire, especially when scoped. Of course, while spraying and bursting is technically the fastest way to put lead down a range, it's not nearly as accurate or consistent as tap firing. Admittedly though, you can usually get away with spraying or bursting with the AUG, as its spray pattern and recoil closely resemble that of the M4's. But the SG553 is a whole nother story. Even though it's not terribly complicated, the SG553 spray pattern is near opposite that of most standard rifles, making it unintuitive to the uninitiated. So without hours of practice put into mastering the SG's unique spray pattern, for most players I would highly suggest using it as a tap gun, while spraying sparingly. Hell, even after years of competitive SG practice, I still prefer to tap instead of spray for consistency's sake. That being said, tapping is not nearly as bad as it sounds, as I think most people would be pleasantly surprised at just how fast you can accurately tap fire with either gun. Remember, all it takes is one tap with the SG553. And trust me, that's much easier to do with an inaccuracy of 2.48 rather than 7.01. Number 3. Set up for success. While the scoped ARs provide similar utility to the standard rifles in terms of medium and close ranges, they obviously excel at longer ranged battles. Again, with some of the best inaccuracies in the game while scoped, you can be sure that your bullets will actually hit where you aim. With that in mind, I do suggest setting up for longer ranged engagements to give yourself more of an advantage over standard riflers. That and the AUG literally has the slowest rifle reload time, so plan accordingly. That being said, setting up for ranged duels doesn't always have to be a stationary effort. In fact, to the contrary. On most T-side maps, you will almost exclusively be forcing fights in order to push a site. With that in mind, try to pick engagement spots where you can consistently fight enemies at longer ranges. For example, one of my favorite spots to force ranged duels is on T-side cache. Even though getting boosted up to fight mid is an extremely common and even expected strategy, the SG553's ranged effectiveness combined with its one-shot lethality give you more than enough firepower to clear out the CTs. Likewise, another ranged spot I like to contest is at T-side mid on Mirage. Unless the CTs have an excellent AWPer shutting down mid completely, the SG553 can make short work of anyone unfortunate enough to challenge you at range. Still, with all that said and done, at the end of the day, it's all about your personal preference. While the lower price changes have definitely made the SG and AUG more viable in the current competitive meta, I still don't see them becoming more popular than the AK or M4. Even though they are definitely a steal for the price, with the literal thousands of hours people have spent practicing with the AK and M4 spray patterns, I just don't see the average player switching over to a scoped assault rifle anytime soon. If anything, the AUG might see a slight increase in competitive usage due to its similarities to the standard rifle spray. But as for the SG553, well, I'm probably still going to be the only person who uses it over the AK-47. Of course, I still think the SG553 is one of the best weapons in the game in terms of raw weapon statistics, but compared to the AK-47, it's kind of like choosing to drive stick shift over automatic. Sure, driving stick gives you more control, but why would you spend the time to learn it if all you do is just drive to work and back? But who knows? Maybe in the future we'll see the SG553 finally get its competitive dues, but for now, I just don't see it. Especially without newer players entering the CSGO scene, but that's another story. If you want a more thorough and statistical breakdown of either the AUG or SG553, I've actually made breakdown videos on both. But honestly, who cares?